You're listening to the 3-Point Conversion.
All right. Well, anyway, with the division leader, we have the New Orleans Saints, and Jeremy was kind enough to cover two teams this week, and he will be opening up with the Saints.
All right. So, yes, I'm going to start out with the New Orleans Saints. So they did win the division last year. They were 13-3. They had a good season. They got put out in the playoffs by the Vikings on a real controversial no-call push-off, and it was absolutely a push-off. We'll get into that. Their head coach, we'll go over who the coaches are and then just some kind of issues that they may have on offense or defense, which with the Saints isn't a whole lot. I mean, they only lost 3 games. We'll hit free agency, we'll draft action, and then we'll do some fantasy aspects, guys that are really good, and then we'll even sprinkle in a little IDP leagues. So that's defensive guys for you people that aren't woke yet on that. So anyway, so they are coached by Sean Payton, and Sean Payton's one of my favorite coaches in the NFL. He's a really brilliant offensive mind. He's probably top 3. You know, people always talk about it during the games. It's one of the favorite topics of broadcast about him and Drew Brees and how they really click together. And his offense is always real high-powered. His offensive coordinator is Pete Carmichael. So I know a lot of people, myself, for one, I never really thought about who their offense and defensive coordinators were. I'm not a huge Saints fan, but I do love me some of their players, fantasy-wise. I know normally when I think about their offense, I just think about Sean Payton because, like I said, he is kind of that offensive mind. So he's who I always think of. On the defensive side, you have Dennis Allen. And, this year, their defense was pretty good. It was really underrated. At 13-3, the only real knock that I would have on the Saints defense was they kind of let leads slip away. So especially in big games, especially in that Vikings game, it was kind of back and forth, and they never really could get that stop. That controversial call aside, if a game's coming down to a no call, it should never come down to a ref. There's always several other things they could have done better, and that's all I've got to say about that. As far as coaching changes, there were none. There haven't been any to this date, I should say that, not yet. I know that there's been several coaches that have interviewed and with several different teams last year and this year. But as of right now, I didn't see anybody that had left yet. Just some of the glaring issues that they're going to have to contend with is their cap space. So they don't have a whole lot of money to make a ton of moves. In case everybody missed it, Drew Brees did announce he's coming back. So that's good. However, he is a free agent technically, so they are going to have to figure that situation out, and I don't foresee him going anywhere else. I don't think the Saints are going to let him go. And I don't think he would have came back and played if he was going to ship off to another team. So I kind of mentioned it. Their defense failed in big moments, in my opinion. And then outside of the best wide receiver in the league, especially this past year, Michael Thomas, they don't really have a whole lot of help in the receiving game. So I'm going to run through real quick just some free agents of note. So like I mentioned, Drew Brees is the big one. You have to imagine he's coming back. Then you've got Teddy Bridgewater, so he's wanting a lot of money, so I'm pretty sure he's gone. And we could speculate to a couple teams he may go to, the Colts, for instance, a couple other teams. Then you got another quarterback, Taysom Hill. So I know we like to talk about Taysom Hill, especially me and Queasy, about whether or not this guy is a starting quarterback. Obviously, he won't be this year with Drew Brees there. But No matter what you think about him, he's probably going to want to either get some type of decent contract to stay and be the heir apparent to Breeze, which I think they might do that for him. Otherwise, if he's wanting too much money, I think he'll quickly realize that he's not going to get it. But he is a really excellent player. Just a couple others, defensive guys especially. You got A.J. Klein, linebacker, Eli Apple, corner. You got P.J. Williams, a corner. Your fullback, Zach Line. Your strong safety, and Von Bell. And they've got a ton of free agents, and they're not going to sign all of them. So I don't know who they're going to roll with or what. With their what they need in the draft specifically or in free agent signings is wide receiver and cornerback. They need edge rusher. So real bad. Everybody always wants those edge rushers anyway. And quarterback. So I think they'll answer that with quarterback in the draft. So if they draft somebody pretty high, which I don't think they will, but if they did, I think that pretty much would put the writing on the wall for Taysom Hill. Their first pick is 24 in the first round, and then they don't have another pick until 88 in the third. So I would think that they're going to go defensive line there in the first pick. So that's what I've got there. And as far as fantasy goes, I mean, my favorite player is Alvin Kamara. He had a down year. I don't think they used him properly. When Mark Ingram was there, it was that dual quarterback or that dual running back system, and he caught a lot of balls out of the backfield, which was really his strong suit in my opinion, and they just got away from that for whatever reason. Didn't really ever see it. They tried to use him as a 3-down back. It didn't really work. Of course, he finished 13 overall in running backs. You had Drew Brees. Like I said, he's coming back. I'm pretty sure they'll sign him. He finished 15th overall. You had Michael Thomas, which is the real big one for them on offense. He was the top wideout, probably the top wideout in the game. Dude doesn't drop anything. A sneaky tight end in Jared Cook. He was 7th overall. And then I know how some of our guys love those kickers. Will Lutz, he finished 2. And then the IDP side, Von Bell, he's a free agent. He finished 10th overall in safeties. Linebacker Demario Davis, 17th. And corner Janoris Jenkins, he finished 21st. But, yeah. So that's what I have for the Saints. Andrew, what you got for any added notes there?
I just have a couple of questions about what you think. I noticed that, you did most of the research on the Saints here. Do you think maybe that the Saints are still in contract negotiations with Drew Brees, maybe trying to get him to take a pay cut so that they can probably free up some cap space and maybe keep Taysom Hill or Bridgewater?
Yeah, I could see that happening for sure. I don't know what the figure would look like. I mean, I don't think it'll dwindle too much from what he was getting paid. And I don't have that figure in front of me, but I would have to imagine it's probably around $25 million a year. But I'd be more interested to see what the length of the contract is, because of course, he was talking about retiring, the possibility of retiring, and now he's coming back. So I would like to know what the length is. Is it a 1-year deal? Because it probably is. At max, it would be like 3, and then he would have the option each year. Obviously, you can retire whenever, but I'd imagine he'd want a lot of money. But I would say if he were to make some of those exceptions to his contract, I don't think it would be to keep like a Bridgewater. Maybe Taysom Hill, if he had that kind of, I know that he's pretty explosive, and they bring him in at tight end and bring him in at running back sometimes, and of course they run him out of the Wildcat formation, but I don't think it would be for that. If anything, it would be to go and get more weapons, probably on the defensive side, or maybe another wideout.
Well, follow up to that, do you think, now we're assuming that Brees signs a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
Do you think that they would take a quarterback possibly with that 3rd-round pick, and if so, who do you think would still be available that the Saints would be after?
There's a lot of guys, and yeah, they could. And they probably will. Like I said, I'd mentioned it. If they do draft a quarterback, even if it's pretty late, But if they draft a quarterback with that third pick, probably the writing's on the wall for Taysom Hill that they don't have the trust in him that he wants. But down to the third, like maybe a Brian Lewerke out of Michigan State would be a guy that I would look at. There's a lot of good quarterbacks coming out of here in this draft, but a lot of them I would think will be gone. Another sneaky one might be like an Anthony Gordon out of Washington State. So I think most of your other ones will be gone, like your Jordan Loves, your Easons, your Froms even. And, of course, your top guys are gone, Burrow and such. They're not going to be there. Maybe Hurts. You never know. Hurts could slide to a third. That would be
No.
That would be weird to see him in the New Orleans stadium.
Well, I'm done. Queasy, do you have any questions for him?
If they did get a quarterback on that third pick, I do think it would be that guy from Washington State. He's pretty good. But what I was going to mention is they have Cameron Jordan, who was a beast last year. Defensive end. If they did draft a rookie defensive end, edge rusher, that's going to help solidify that defense and probably open up opportunities for him to also too, depending on how good that rookie is, of course.
No doubt. I think it would, for sure. I don't know who they would look at per se, but anytime you have anybody that's just a really talented edge rusher, because most of edge rushing, while there obviously is some technique to it, a lot of it's athleticism. And, most of those real good edge rusher guys are guys that are really fast for their size and do that rip maneuver and get underneath a really slow tackle. Mm-hmm. And, Cam Jordan's already a monster. So if you could get him freed up to do any more damage, it's only going to help. And that might be, I think the Saints are just maybe a player or maybe just a couple of plays away from being in the Super Bowl. And they need to strike while the iron's hot, that's for sure. They don't have a ton of time because as soon as Breeze goes, I think you'll start seeing a lot of their team go down.
Make sure to follow the 3-Point Conversion host on Twitter.
Blue at Rastalion1131, Jeremy at Checkerboard J, Andrew at Jedi Quarterback.